Hey everyone, and how goes it? I'm your instructor, Dr. JJ Shepard, and welcome to CSCE552 Game Development. Today, we're going to begin our discussion by focusing on the core topic at hand and introduce the process that includes game design and game development. Pressing start. Our goal is creating a game, and before we get to that, let's understand what we are creating by examining a very brief history. Games have been around since ancient times and have been an integral part of every culture. Even before written history, we had games such as Test of Strengths, races, and various combat sports that are commonly depicted on pottery and other forms of art. From there, we could take a short trip forward in time and notice that every civilization has had games associated with them. Within the classic Mesopotamia region and parts of Africa, we have games such as the Royal Game of Ur, Senet, and Mancala. Moving further east within Asia, we see games like Go, Chaturanga, Parcheesi, and Shogi. Moving west, we see in the Americas sports like Ulamatsli, which is the Mesoamerican hitball game. Our history shows how important play and games have been to our evolution. Some have argued that games may have signaled the evolution of more complex human activities. The genesis of video games started to emerge as early as the 1950s. One of the first instances was Bertie the Brain by Joseph Katz, shown in the 1950 Canadian National Exhibition. Initial research in human-computer interactions and artificial intelligence led to the game OXO, or Noughts and Crosses, by Sandy Douglas in 1952. The same year, and within the same field of research, checkers, or drafts, was developed by Chris Strachey. Another early notable instance is Tennis for Two by William Higginbotham in 1958. I must mention that there have been many electronic games that occurred sooner than all of these, but sadly, many of those have been disassembled and lost to time. Games are the largest industry today, beating both movies and music combined. This has been true for many years and continues to be true. This is based on information provided by the Entertainment Software Association, the ESA. In teaching games for a while, there are some misconceptions that I need to address before moving forward. As silly as it sounds, playing a game is very different from creating one. I know this may come across as facetious, but many people assume that because they enjoy playing games, that they will also enjoy creating them. However, they are very much two different interests, and there's nothing wrong with favoring one over the other. Alongside of that, many incorrectly assume that creating a game is similar to playing a game. This is also very much not true. Producing and consuming are two very different actions. Playing a game can be difficult and time-consuming, but rewarding. I believe we can all understand getting lost in a game and the entertainment being rewarding. Yet, we can understand that enjoyment can be derived by creating too, and this is why making a game can be difficult and time-consuming, but is rewarding in a different way. Creating or producing a game is an intricate, detailed process which requires a developer to be a Renaissance person, which simply means knowing and combining both arts and sciences. This is essential to creating a game, and we need to be able to do both to be successful, or at least give it our best. As mentioned, creating a game is an intricate, detailed process. We should understand that a process is a series of actions which lead to some goal or end. We will learn that processes which contain other processes themselves, and creating a game is a process. However, there is not one correct way to create a game, but we know that clear, effective communication is required for every part of this process. For instance, game designers communicate to the developers the game concept. The developers need to understand what kind of game is being created and what it features. Programmers communicate with the machines via code to implement the game. We know this from programming courses that programming languages are used to communicate to the machines that we call computers. Artists communicate to the players the emotion of the game by using story, visual, and sound elements. Producers communicate to publishers about why the game should be promoted. The producer needs to explain why the game will make money if it is promoted. Publishers must communicate with consumers to sell the game. It's the publisher's job to let the consumer know why they should part with their money. Write it down, draw it out, whatever it takes to make the ideas clear. There is no one correct way to do this, but we need to communicate to get anywhere. Now, let's focus on the overall process, while keeping in mind that communication is always key. The goal of developing most games is to take it from an idea for a game and bring it to the consumers to play. Creating or producing a game requires an idea to first be designed and then developed. Publishing brings a developed game to the consumer. Taking a more in-depth look at the game production process, we can see that there's more steps involved. Game production is the process of creating a game from an idea, which includes game design and game development. As we will learn, game design and development are two different processes. Game development is the implementation of the game concept, which requires combining arts and sciences. Be a Renaissance person! We know our goal is to create this thing called a game. We know that communication is key. However, what exactly is a game? Defining a game is not quite as simple as it sounds, and it is a topic that we will explore in the future lectures. For now, we can consider all games are systems in which players attempt to reach objectives by using procedures or processes, defined by rules which establish how resources can be used to reach their objective, where conflict exists, which impedes reaching their objective, and where boundaries exist, creating a space of play to finally reach some quantifiable outcome. This definition helps us understand that all games have the following formal elements: players, objectives, procedures, rules, resources, conflict, boundaries, and outcome. These provide the structure of the game itself. As an exercise, consider how these formal elements apply to an obvious game like tic-tac-toe, versus solving a derivative for a calculus course or analyzing a poem for an English course. Beyond formal elements, games also contain dramatic elements. We know that dramatic elements relate to drama, which can be a series of interesting or intense events related to conflicting forces. This is the way a game emotionally engages the player. Some dramatic elements for games include challenge and play. Both of these are fundamental to all games, and so all games present challenge and play as a dramatic element. We get emotionally involved with trying to reach a goal in a game that is facilitated by play. Otherwise, we would not become so upset when we lose a very close contest. In addition, characters, premise, and story acts as additional supporting elements that can emotionally engage a player. Not all games need characters or story, but it can be useful to make the play more meaningful for the player. We may have noticed that in both the formal and dramatic elements, the concept of play was mentioned. However, what is play? And how does that relate to games? This is also more difficult than it appears, but the concept of play has been explored for a considerable amount of time. For the most part, we can consider what Johann Huizinga had mentioned in defining the play concept. In his work Homo Ludens, he defines the play concept as having 5 characteristics. Play is free and play is freedom. Play is separate from ordinary life. Play is distinct from ordinary life both in location and duration. Play creates order, absolute and supreme. Play is connected with no material interest, and no profit can be gained from it. This is a very important work in exploring both play and games, and there are many concepts from this work that will appear many times over in this course. I do strongly recommend that you don't just take my word for it, read it. While defining games and play is going to require more discussion, we can easily understand how important play is related to games. Based on how we play games, we can at least start defining the different kinds of games. We can start defining the kinds of games based on the things we are interacting with. All games generally have some physical component: pawns, dice, boards, cards, voice, etc. When a game only has physical components, they may be considered card games, board games, tabletop games, folk games, parlor games, or sports. These are considered physical games. In relation, a video game implies that this is an extended version of a game that provides a visual element via a video screen. Just like physical games, these contain the formal elements: players, objectives, procedures, rules, resources, conflict, boundaries, and outcome. And they also contain the dramatic elements: challenge, play, characters, premise, and story. Seems simple enough until we start to consider, do all video games have video? As strange as it may seem, let's look historically at the game Oregon Trail 1971. Originally, this was designed to use a teletype printer for its output. This would not be considered video output, but we can always assume that Oregon Trail is a video game and started out with no video. Also, another game, Johann Sebastian Joust, or JS Joust for short, was a game that debuted in roughly 2012 and was featured in the 2014 game Sports Friends. This is a game that has no meaningful visual display and relied only on audio and motion controls. Yet, both of these we can consider to be video games. In contrast with purely physical games, some games have an electronic component: video screen, joysticks, speakers, motion sensors, etc. Each electronic component can be either digital or analog, simply meaning it receives input either as a continuous function like a wave or via zeros and ones. A game with any electronic component can be considered an electronic game. This in fact may include some classically considered board games that feature electronic components, such as Mall Madness, Dream Phone, or Ask Xandar. However, colloquially, a video game or computer game is a game with some electronic component and is generally interchangeable with electronic game. We understand what a game must have, and our goal is to create a video game. While knowing these definitions is important, we always need to leave some room for interpretation. Not everything has clearly defined lines, and we should always allow for some creative space for exploration. Within the space of all games, there are several common related types called genres. A genre is a category of some artistic work that is characterized by a particular form or content. For game genres, these typically are games that feature common interactions, objectives, and outcomes. Sometimes I will lump this all together into the term play style. The top-level major game genres include action, adventure, action-adventure, puzzle, role-playing, simulation, strategy, casual, and hardcore games. Crossover between genres is very common. We can see that in one of the major genres being action-adventure. These used to be two distinct genres, but there were so many games that feature crossover elements that it warranted it becoming its own genre. Many games feature elements commonly found in many different genres. Within genres, there are subgenres, and within those subgenres, there are sub-subgenres. Taking a look at each major genre, we can see what defines its qualities, and also start to recognize that many games we know fall into not just one of these genres, but the subgenres within the groups. The first is a fairly large one, called action games. Action games focus on physical challenges, which commonly require strong dexterity and hand-eye coordination. Subgenres of the action games include platformers, shooters, fighting, stealth, survival, and rhythm. Within action, we can see the subgenres and even their subgenres. Platformer games focus on jumping and climbing around an environment. Fixed screen, side-scrolling, Metroidvania all describe different properties or subgenres of platformers. Shooter games feature players launching projectiles toward adversaries. First-person shooters, third-person shooters, shoot-'em-ups or shmups, tactical, and extraction are common subgenres of the shooter games. Fighting games are primarily about close-quarter combat, typically between two, sometimes more opponents. 2D, 3D, arena, beat-em-ups all describe different versions of the same game genre, which typically rely on the type and number of opponents. Stealth games take a different approach to action games and focus more on avoiding direct conflict by sneaking or hiding mechanics. Survival games focus on the player lasting as long as possible by carefully managing their limited resources against the odds. These would include survival horror and battle royale games. Rhythm games focus on testing a player's timing with music-based challenges. These were once considered puzzle games. Adventure games is a genre that features puzzles and problem solving while not relying on dexterity, timing, or hand-eye coordination like an action game. Some subgenres are text adventures, graphic adventures, visual novels, interactive movies, and real-time 3D adventures. These are commonly motivated by an overall story, like the hero's journey or a mystery. Action-adventure games are a genre that features elements common to both action and adventure games. Action gameplay, adventure story and setting. Subgenres include survival horror, which focuses on fear as a key motivator. Metroidvania, which shares quality of exploration, skill, equipment acquirement, and backtracking for further exploration, which was popularized in both the games Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo and Castlevania Symphony for the Night for the PlayStation. Puzzle games primarily focus on problem solving and challenge the player's mental acuity. Common subgenres include logic, physics, programming games, hidden object, escape room games, puzzle platformers, once again combining this genre with another. Role-playing games put the player in the role of a character who gains strength and experience by overcoming challenges. This is based heavily on tabletop RPGs, such as Dungeons & Dragons, Ultima, and Vampire the Masquerade. In these games, the player typically starts by creating their character and assigning properties called stats. These can be selected or randomly assigned. Experience is typically implemented using a system called experience points, or XP for short. In other types of RPGs, the character has already been created and their stats assigned. The importance in this experience is earned by completing tasks. Common subgenres include action RPGs. Another hybrid genre, like puzzle platformer, we find these mixed together with action and adventure, but also adds elements like experience points. MMORPGs, which are massively multiplayer online RPGs. Roguelike are based on the semi-graphical text adventure called Rogue, or Rogue Exploring the Dungeons of Doom, which randomly places objects and randomly generates the layout of its dungeons. Tactical RPGs put significance on placement of units and characters in the game. Unlike other RPGs, location is more critical in a tactical RPG. Monster or beast tamers emphasize training creatures to perform some task or battle. Simulation games mimic the real-life topic, and its associated actions are as close as possible. Popular subgenres include construction or management simulation, farming or job simulation, life simulation, vehicle simulation, and sports. Strategy games challenge the player's long-term planning skills and their ability to adjust and adapt plans in reaching an overall goal. Common subgenres are based on whether it is played in real time or do the players take turns. We can see this with real-time strategies, RTS, and turn-based strategies, TBS. These are based on leading a group of characters by giving them orders or strategically acquiring, maintaining, using, and defending resources in order to build structures, discover new technology, and achieve some larger goal. We can also see this in real-time tactics and turn-based tactics. These are similar in nature, but commonly remove the need to acquire resources. We also notice that turn-based tactics typically cross over with the RPG genre. Tower defense has similar concepts as well, but put the player solely in the role of a defender. Multiplayer online battle arena, or MOBAs, typically pits two teams of players where each player controls a single character with unique abilities that become more powerful over time. The goal is to destroy the other team's structure while also defending their own. Game genres can also relate to the game's difficulty. Casual and hardcore games can be any other genre and more elicit the initial learning curve, accessibility, time commitment, and overall difficulty of the game. Casual games typically are not highly difficult and do not require much time commitments as they are easy to pick up and play. Sandbox, creative, open world, and cozy games can be considered casual games or feature casual elements of other games. Hardcore games have a much higher learning curve, which requires a more extensive time commitment. Much like other media like music or movies, there are many more genres and subgenres and sub-subgenres of games. We must keep in mind the key idea is that genres only describe what is commonly expected from that type of game. Common play styles, common features, common mechanics, and goals. We need to know these terms so we can better communicate our ideas with other people. Creating a game requires communicating concepts to other team members, and selling a game requires communicating the concepts to the consumers. Being aware of these terms helps us better describe the games that we will be creating. We will also learn how the formal and dramatic elements play a factor in all of these as well. Another set of terms that we should know revolve around the game's platforms. Video games require computing hardware and software to operate. A video game platform is the entire collection of required hardware and software components needed to play the video game. Common game platforms include PC or personal computers, console like PlayStation, Nintendo, or Magnavox Odyssey, handheld or mobile like Game Gear and iPhones, arcade, browser, and XR, which is mixed reality combining both virtual reality and augmented reality. Platforms are major considerations when planning to create a game, and it's useful to be aware of the major platforms and what they provide. Now that we understand some basics about games, let's address the major question: how do you make a game? While there are many details involved with making a game that will be discussed, to provide a quick preview, here we see the fully expanded game production process with each of the essential roles and phases. It all amounts to taking an idea, designing it into a game concept, and then developing that into a game. We will learn about the game production process and especially the procedures: concept, pre-production, production, and post-production. We will also learn that all games have common behavior patterns called the game loop pattern. The essential steps of this pattern are events, update, and draw. Being able to identify these helps us both design the game and implement the software that will use this pattern effectively. In addition, we will learn about the game object and component structure pattern that is commonly found in most game systems, or in other words, game engines. Being able to identify this and understand how a game engine works assists in ultimately creating a game. In this lecture, we have focused on defining a game, defining video games, reviewing various video game genres and platforms. Now that we know about games, we can start effectively communicating our ideas and start making them. With all of that being said, start thinking about the kinds of games you want to create, and I'll talk to you next time. Now it's time for a bonus round. What is key to all parts of the game production process? Communication is key to all of this. What are the formal elements that are found in all games? Players, objectives, procedures, rules, resources, conflict, boundaries, and outcome. What are the dramatic elements found in all games, and what are the dramatic elements found in some games? Challenge and play are found in all games, while characters, premise, and story are found in some. What are the 5 characteristics that define the play concept? Play is free and play is freedom. Play is separate from ordinary life. Play is distinct from ordinary life both in location and duration. Play creates order absolute and supreme. And play is connected with no material interest and no profit can be gained from it. What are the major game genres? Action, adventure, puzzle, role-playing, simulation, strategy, casual, and hardcore. Now it's time to look ahead with our forward vector. We're going to look at how these topics discussed relate to the course assignments. We're going to learn about the game design document, the GDD, which is typically created as a wiki later in this course. This document describes the game that is going to be created and is used and updated by the team as the design and development process progresses. Within its overview section, the document must describe the major game genre and subgenre if applicable. The major genres that must be mentioned are action-adventure, puzzle, role-playing, simulation, strategy, and casual or hardcore. The subgenres can further help describe the game being created. Also, this section needs to relate the game being created to other games and must include images of those related games. Also within the document is the Technical Design Document, the TDD, which contains all of the information related to the technologies that will be used to create the game. This section must mention the game's platform. While this could be PC, console, mobile handheld, arcade, browser, or XR, for this course we focus only on PC games. Now, with all that being said, I'll talk to you next time.